Okay, with that, then can I get a motion to approve the committee minutes of November 6th, 2023?
So move.
It's been moved by trustee Lindsay, seconded by trustee Alapa. Is there any changes to those minutes? Okay, hearing none, can I get a roll call vote for their approval?
Trustee Ahuna is excused. Trustee Akaka.
Aye.
Trustee Akina.
Aye.
Trustee Alapa. Trustee Galataria.
Aye.
Trustee Lindsay.
Aye.
Trustee Souza.
Aye.
Trustee Trask.
Aye.
Sorry. Chair Whitehead.
Yes.
8 yes votes.
Okay, the minutes are approved. If I failed to mention it earlier, I did want to say that trustee Ahuna has requested to be excused from this meeting, so he's duly excused. But with that, we have no unfinished business, so that's okay. So we're going to move on to the consequence capital management introduction presentation, and I will ask if is there anyone testimony signed up?
No one
For
signed
this
up to testify,
motion?
Chair White.
Seeing that there's no testimony, I will turn this over to Vijoy. I'll just turn it over directly to you, Vijoy. And yeah, you can proceed as you see fit.
Thank you, Chair. Aloha kako, trustees, staff, members of the community. Thank you very much. It's wonderful to be back in front of everyone. Hard to believe we're at the end of January and we just started a new year. So the excitement I have for what we're going to accomplish this year and sort of the format we're establishing with meeting with all of you again will be that consequent capital management, whom I represent, and I'm Vijoy Chatterjee. We will try to come to as many of these meetings as possible. We will be providing education. We'll be providing policy and activity recommendations, as well as we want to invite different managers as we have today that oversee parts of your assets in the portfolio to come and present and establish communication and relationships with everyone. So today, I know you have a very packed agenda, and so my part is going to be pretty small, and we will hear from our manager in a moment, who will be the bulk of our time. And then, of course, you have a full agenda to get through. So you should have some material from Consequent Capital Management as part of your presentation. Some of it is repeated in terms of who we are and sort of background, and there's a glossary in there. This week's glossary happens to be focused more on private markets because the manager who's presenting is more from the private market space. So you can take a look at that at your own leisure. And I'm also hoping to come and meet individually and as necessary to review that material and other questions that you might have for us in terms of the investment portfolio. But for now, if I could just direct your attention to page 5 of the presentation. I'm going to be very brief in terms of the bullet points I'm going over here. As part of the way that we will present to you every time there is an RMC meeting, I'm hoping is that we'll review a little bit of what happened last time. So as you remember, at the December RMC meeting, we had outside presenters, one of them being GGA, the Global Governance Associates, who came and talked to you about fiduciary responsibilities, about governance, and they remain a resource that we can call on in the future to talk about those issues. And I did want to just remind you that, some of the big points they made are that, to be a good fiduciary, you have to have prudence, loyalty, impartiality. And they also talked about the idea that over the long term, so I think they had a 10-year time horizon. They had examples where good governance by a well-functioning board can contribute 100 to 200 basis points to return over time. You translate that into dollars and you compound that, that's tens of millions and more of dollars as you kind of grow. So the role of you as trustees providing governance and fiduciary oversight on the portfolio has impact and significant in your work. And so that was a major point, and I just wanted to make sure we recall that. Also, we talked about decision making, and we had a guest from the EUTF, the trustee who oversees the investment committee of EUTF, Christian Fern, came and talked directly as a peer in a sense to you in overseeing a fiduciary responsibility of assets that are managed here in the islands. And he talked about how he became more familiar with being an investor and getting comfortable working with staff and working with the stakeholders and the other trustees to oversee their portfolio. And, you know, the EUTF has grown to over $6 billion. I don't know if everybody understands that, but that's significant. That's going to, it should rival the size of the ERS portfolio over the next couple of decades. That's the intention. And Christian also remains a great resource right here in the islands for all of us to be able to call on and to work with. He's really a very approachable person and has his responsibilities and leadership as all of you do. And that's why I thought it was nice to have him here. Just in terms of, you know, I want to move things along. I'll just quickly mention that in terms of upcoming events, this is sort of the way Consequent would like to be able to present in front of you, both in terms of education, in terms of issues relevant to the portfolio. We will have a more expanded education session at the February 7th board RMC meeting is our expectation, as well as I've lined up a panel of three CIOs actually. One is oversees a state plan, not the Hawaii plan, a plan on the continent. The second oversees a city plan, but he used to oversee a plan here in Hawaii. They're both active CIOs, which will be interesting for you to kind of hear from. And then the third person is actually the retired CIO from the EUTF. And so I think that'll be kind of an interesting story. So that'll come up at the next RMC meeting. And then I'm hoping that I believe there's another RMC meeting scheduled for the 27th of February. So if you'll have us here for that, I'm hoping after consulting with staff a little bit, we may be coming in and making some policy recommendations, or at least introducing some policy change ideas that at some point you as trustees will have the ability to approve or, you know, want to see something else. So that's kind of our hope going forward. And then that'll get us already to March. And I know you all have the Common Fund event in March. So, you know, we'll kind of move along quickly. So that's kind of the way we see things unfolding over the next number of weeks. And of course, in the meantime, I will always reach out, and you can feel free to reach back or reach to me anytime so that we can have additional conversations about the investment portfolio, about policy, however it suits and fits with your own schedules. So with that, what I'd like to do is if you go to page 6 of the presentation, today we have a treat in that we have one of your investment managers in the private market side, Pantheon, Ian Jones, who's based in San Francisco, but the group is global and they've managed your assets for quite a while now. I think a couple decades. Ian can explain further. There's a little bit of a description of the firm in terms of a few bullet points here on this page, as well as Ian's background. But Ian Jones is going to come up now and he's going to walk you through that in more detail and talk about what they do for you as one of your investment managers. And, you know, feel free to ask questions of him at any point or at the end. And I'll also be available here to help direct questions. So Ian, please come on up and I will sit on the side here.
Aloha, lovely to meet you all. Good afternoon. It's probably been 4 or 5 years since I presented to this group, so great to be back. Thank you for inviting me, and nice to see everyone in person. Oh, yeah, sorry. Okay. Hopefully everyone on the line can hear me clearly there. Wonderful. So I think the presentation will be shared on screen. I believe you all have copies in front of you, so I will refer to slides as I go through the presentation. Just in terms of housekeeping, I'd planned for approximately 20 minutes for this presentation. Q&A is fantastic, so please stop me and ask questions along the way. Sure. Okay, perfect. Okay, perfect. Maybe just while we begin, I may provide a little bit of my own background. So Ian Jones, I'm a managing director in Pantheon's investor relations team. I've been with the firm 12 years, starting in our London office. I've worked with our clients globally, so starting in Europe, Asia, and more recently in North America. And I manage our institutional investor relations team across the US. I prepared, the presentation I prepared really consists of 3 components. So the first is a Pantheon firm update. The second is a little bit about the private equity market and the market backdrop that we're in today. And that is important because the majority of your investments with Pantheon are in private equity. So hopefully the comments in section 2 will provide some context for section 3, which will be going through your actual Pantheon investments. So I may jump in, and I'm just focused on slide 4. So this is the Pantheon firm overview. One thing to highlight here, we're a global firm, as Vijay mentioned. We've been investing in private markets for 40 years across private equity, infrastructure, private credit, and real estate. That means we've seen many cycles. We are going through a period of heightened volatility and going through one of those cycles. And we think okay, wonderful. Pantheon have been investing in private markets for 40 years, so across cycles. What we're trying to do with our platform is identify the best entry points into the highest quality private companies, loans, and assets. Today, we have 136 investment professionals across 13 offices, and we're managing close to 95 billion in assets. We have relationships with over 1,000 institutions globally, and the power of the platform in our mind are the relationships that we have, the information that we have access to, and the data and analytics. And we look to combine all that, as I say, to access the most compelling investment opportunities. On slide 5, we've just highlighted some of the key members of the global investment team who are responsible ultimately for your Pantheon investments. So the International Investment Committee, this is made up of leaders from across the business, across our asset classes. And the idea is that this committee has final say on all investments, but also shares perspective and ideas that we're seeing from across investment teams globally, sharing best practice. On slide 6, I'm not going to dwell here, but this gives a snapshot as to some of our clients, similarly global perspectives from our client base. So understanding key issues in different markets in our objectives at providing best-in-class client service. On slide 7, I'm introducing Pantheon's private equity platform here because, as I say, these are where the majority of your investments are. We manage approximately 66 billion. We have 85 professionals managing that capital, and we look to invest $4 billion a year annually. I'd expect that to go up a little bit in the coming years. Since 2009, we've had a focus as a platform on what we call the mid-market. So these are attractive, resilient, but slightly smaller companies than you may see at the top end of the market, and certainly smaller on the whole than you might see in the public markets, access to through the stock markets. And we focus there because we fundamentally think that there's most value to be created in that part of the market, and they're the most compelling businesses for us. So that was a very quick overview of the firm. I wanted to spend just a couple of minutes on the private equity market backdrop. So What I refer to when I'm talking about private equity are private companies, so not listed on stock markets. The private equity industry has grown from a cottage industry in the 80s into a multi-trillion-dollar global industry that it is today. And part of that growth has been driven by the strong historic returns that investors have been able to generate investing in private equity, and also a belief and a philosophy that out of the scrutiny of the public markets and with more time, and it is a long-term investment, there's a long-term horizon and a long-term asset class. With time, good private equity sponsors can improve businesses, make them better, grow them faster, and position them then to be then to have successful exits. So to sell those businesses and return that capital back to investors. And that's the name of the game, and that's what we're trying to do. So 3 key themes as we sit here today at the start of 2024. The first is that higher interest rates have had a big impact in private equity, as they have across all aspects of life. It's made debt more expensive, and that's been more challenging for weaker companies. And I think what we're beginning to see is a divergence in performance from stronger companies and weaker companies. And what we will see, and I'm on slide 9 here, what we will see is, we believe, in an environment like we're in one today, there will be a divergence in the performance of the top managers and the weaker managers. And so selecting the right managers will be very important. The 2023 was characterized by decreased levels of new investment, and also, and they are correlated, a reduction in the sales of existing private equity-backed companies in portfolios. And really, this was driven by both market uncertainty, but also valuation gaps that were created by the rapidly rising interest rates. We expect these dynamics to unwind slightly in 2024. So we expect, as valuation gaps begin to narrow, and I'm on slide 9, just on the middle box here, but as valuation gaps begin to narrow, we would expect to see more companies being sold, greater investment activity, and that will create more cash back to the OHA portfolio in 2024. And I'm going to highlight that a little later on. There's also a dynamic here where, and I'll come to it in a slide, but there's a lot of capital waiting to be invested. So there's a lot of capital on the sidelines waiting for opportunities. And then finally, and this is a Pantheon thesis from our platform, but in markets where you have limited liquidity, we think being a source of liquidity and a liquidity provider is a good place to be. And so secondaries is one area that we invest in a lot, where those dynamics are set up in this current environment. So there are, I'm on slide 10, and there are some data to support some of the points I was just making there. I'm not going to dwell on these slides too long. The first relates to the new investment activity. So entry multiples for new companies have begun to come down, and that's really due to the cost and the expense of debt, and the fact that groups are financing new investments with slightly less debt. Reducing price expectations for investors is a good thing, because we need the bid-ask spread between price expectations to narrow to create the exits that I'll come to a little bit later on. On slide 11, and this is a factor which will impact new investments and exits, but it's our view that in 2024, because of, and I mentioned all the capital here, we've got over $2 trillion waiting on the sidelines, ready to be invested. So there is a lot of pent-up demand to participate and buy these private companies. So that's a dynamic that we will expect to see accelerating in 2024. Slide 12, and this really dovetails with slide 13, but as people have been riding the uncertainty since rate rises, they've been holding back from selling companies. And so the downstream effect, and you'll see this on slide 13, is that there have been fewer distributions flowing back to investors. Again, we would expect this to pick up And I'll come back to this point when we get to the OHA portfolio in a couple of slides. So those are the key points in our mind in terms of the market setup and where we are today in the private equity market backdrop. We've included some key takeaways here. I'm not going to spend time going through each one. Please read them at your leisure. But what I do want to do now is move into your investments with Pantheon. So slide 16 has a summary of the investments. You have invested 46.7 million from 2004 to 2014 with Pantheon. 95% of that is in private equity and then 5% in private infrastructure. So think data centers, airports, toll roads, renewable energy projects, things like that. In terms of your aggregate performance, so we have called 41.5 million out of your total 46.7 million investments, and that's very common for there to be a slight discrepancy there. So we've called 41.5 million. The total value of those investments is 68.3 million, which is a $27 million gain. The return on those investments are just around 9% net IRR, so that's after all fees and expenses. And the net multiple is a 1.64, so the investments have gone up by 0.64. When I look at the portfolio and we dig into it in a little bit more detail, I think there are some very positive things here within the portfolio, and then some investments that have suffered, and I'll come to that in a little bit. In terms of the positives, all of your investments that have been made post the GFC, so we're looking at funds with a vintage year of 2010 and beyond, although those with a vintage year of 2007, because they invest over 4 years, we're making a lot of investments after the GFC, the global financial crisis. All of those investments have generated a 10 to 14% return for OHA, with the exception of the emerging Asia investment, and I'll come to that. But those returns, we think are attractive. On the negative side, 3 investments that were made in 2004, so we're investing pre-global financial crisis, and they have had underwhelming performance. So they have been disappointing. They're your oldest investments. And then this investment, PEEF, which is Pantheon Emerging Asia Fund 6, there's still a lot of value there, and we still think there's value to be created. The majority of the exposure is in India and China. I think with India, we've had volatility in the performance, although on a go-forward basis, we're very bullish on India and the prospects for India. Within China, there's just more challenges currently, more uncertainty, and so by consequence, some of those investments have suffered. All in all, across the entire portfolio, we've generated a return premium of approximately 200 basis points, so approximately 2% versus what you could have got by investing in the public markets on the private equity side, and a return premium of approximately 5% on the infrastructure benchmark, which is an inflation-linked benchmark. Digging into the portfolio a little bit, so on slide 17, we have the performance over the last year. The nature of this portfolio and the fact that it's a more mature portfolio, you'll notice that the last investments were in 2014. What you'd expect to see is the dynamic that we see here. So distributions, so money coming back to OHA, are much greater than the money that we're calling from you now because of the maturity profile of the portfolio. So we returned 13% of the money over the course of the last year to you, and we would expect that dynamic to pick up, and I'll show you that in a couple of slides. In terms of your portfolio diversification on slide 18, this shows you by geography, by strategy, and by vintage, how your portfolio is invested. I don't think there's too much to highlight here. We've talked about the age profile of the portfolio, so you can see that 75% of the investments were made prior to 2014. If we had a blank sheet of paper, we would probably do a little bit more in North America here and maybe a little bit more in co-investments, but that's something on a go-forward basis to discuss. Slide 19. So because this is a more mature portfolio and it's really in harvest and exit mode, we're constantly looking at the portfolio to try and identify ways of creating faster money back for you as an investor, so to return money quicker. We will do that by selling portfolios in the secondary market. Slide 19 is some information on the portfolio that we're planning to sell. Currently, this will generate just under $500,000 back to OHA, and we're selling these positions because there's limited remaining upside value left. Finally, and slide 20 is a chart, and the data that sits behind this chart is just on slide 21. But we've done a projection looking through the investments and looking forward as to what you can expect, I think importantly for distributions that will come back to OHA in the coming years. So we expect to generate approximately 5 million of distributions this year, and then 3 million and then 2 million as the portfolio becomes increasingly tail end. So the sort of punchline here is you will be net cash flow positive from your Pantheon investments and continue to be starting this year and into the future. And so we expect to generate in total approximately $72 million of total value on your Pantheon investments of 43 million. So a gain of almost 29 million.
Trustee Trask.
Thank you. You know, I actually had this question a little while ago, but when I hear some of the terms that you're using, like heightened volatility and market uncertainty, I'm not really sure what that means for the investments of my office. I did look in the glossary, but it's not there. When I looked on my own, I saw some examples of the global impact of the separation, the political separation with China. And at that time, many investors from the US went to India. And your prior question was questioning, raising some interest. Part of the reason why I ask this is because I'm not really sure if the investments of my office are subject to this investment in areas or fields where there's heightened volatility or market uncertainty. And when I look in your glossary, it's not defined. It's just that I don't understand what those terms mean. And some predictions are coming true now about investments in China. I see our investment portfolio, but it doesn't link it to geographical locations. That was the question I had.
Yeah, maybe, and a great question. One, maybe I can provide a little bit of color just as to the exposure that you have through the Pantheon portfolio specifically to China, and then where and in what sectors that portfolio is more orientated towards.
I just need to know, are my investments at risk there?
So we don't believe that there's significant risk of loss of capital.
All right.
The way the investments have been positioned doesn't at present draw them into a sort of under the microscope of some of the sectors that have received a lot more attention within China. So they're not in some of the largest tech firms and platforms. They're not in any areas related to national security. So the portfolio is intentionally positioned with that in mind. So
Thank you for that. And I don't really have a very good background in this area, but I'm watching it. So if in the future, when you come to advise us, if there's any concern in this, because of this problem with regards to markets being uncertain because of geographical investment, please let me know. But based on what you've said, it's not really a big concern for our office at this time.
Within the Pantheon portfolio,
Yes.
I wouldn't view it as a big concern.
Okay,
No.
great. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Trustee Alapa.
Okay, so I have a question on a couple of the terminology you used or what's written here. One is record levels of dry powder. What does that mean?
Yeah, so dry powder, industry buzzword, it means capital that investors have committed to private equity managers and their funds that hasn't yet been invested. So it is capital that private equity managers have, and they typically have a period of 5 years to go and find companies to buy. So they have that capital, but they haven't yet found the companies to buy. And there is a clock that's ticking because they only have 5 years to find those companies. So
What happens if they don't?
they would speak to their investors and either get an extension or cancel the remaining commitment if they didn't think it was a viable strategy. So I think what it should illustrate, and what I was hoping to illustrate, there's a lot of capital on the sidelines that managers have the ability to go and buy companies with, and they're all looking to do that right now. So there's a lot of appetite to go and start making deals. And we're already seeing at the start of 2024, a pickup relative to what we saw in 23 in terms of activity.
Okay, and also you mentioned about a 30% increase. What does that translate in dollars?
The 30% increase.
In our fund? You mentioned that 30%. This is on page 17.
Yes, so yeah, 13% of the value that you had with Pantheon
Yes.
was distributed back to you. So we sent you back cash equating to 13% of the value of your investment.
13 or 30?
13.
Oh,
13,
13.
yeah.
Okay.
So 13% of the value of your investments were returned back to you in the last 12 months.
And that amount was?
1.7 million against a starting amount of 12.7.
Got it. Thank you.
Any other questions? Trustee Galatario.
Thank you. Ian, thank you for your
I
presentation.
know.
Just a couple of, when I saw dry powder, that the term "keep your powder dry" comes to mind,
Right,
because when you're ready, you're going to fire away.
right,
Right.
right.
Okay. On page 12, this is just a general 30,000 foot question. It's the reduction in exit activity, increased hold periods.
Yeah.
So I'm noticing that in the graph here, the number and value of exits continue to trend down. Yet in 2021, there's an incredible increase. What does that do to?
Yeah. So if we think back to 2021, we had, I think, a lot of money flowing through the financial system because we had COVID-related stimulus. There was the reduction in interest rates, and so there was a lot of money in the system, and that pushed up valuations across the board. So both public valuations, but also valuations on the private side. And so managers who had good companies were looking to take advantage of that and crystallize strong exits for those companies in an environment of heightened valuation and frankly a lot of free money.
Was it chaotic in that period? Like
it was
seemed
incredibly
like
busy.
everybody just
It was incredibly busy. Yeah,
moved.
everything got turbocharged. So the amount of the investment activity, the exits that were coming back, the fundraising. So when groups go out and raise more capital to make new investments. So everything was sort of turbocharged in 2021.
Finally, and nothing specific to our portfolio, but from a personal and, well, obviously professional perspective, because it will affect our investments, what is your view of the current status of our economy? It depends on who you talk to. It's election year, so guys on the right are talking one way, guys on the left talking another way.
Yeah.
If you could be as candid as possible.
Yeah. So I would say, as we think about our investment activity in 2024, there appears to be, which is reason for a lot of joy, there appears to be a decline in inflation, and it's coming. It certainly feels like it's under control currently, and it's trending towards the rate and the amount that the Fed would like to see. If you saw the sort of minutes from the meeting today, I think the Fed have softened their stance and are preparing, if you believe the market, to cut interest rates. And that's in real response to a decline in inflation. So I think the market views that positively, and lower interest rates, less debt burden. I think you're going to see a slight recalibration in valuations, and we would expect more activity to come as a result of that. I also think you've seen some optimism as it relates to things like productivity gains, which have been notoriously elusive. But more recently, we've seen a little bit of uptick there, which is some reason for optimism. So that's the sort of positive, the soft landing that was much talked about. I think, there is a real shot that we could, that the Fed could sort of stick the soft landing this year, and you would enter a period of less volatility, more prosperity. So that's sort of the upside case. And I think there's a lot of merit to that. As whenever you look at the macro and make predictions, there will always be uncertainty on the horizon. There's plenty of it, of course, with geopolitical tension. So that's a very a classically hedged answer, but I think there's a lot to like about the U.S. economy today. But as always, there are threats.
Well, Yellen feels very confident about it. She talks very highly of it. So 2024 should be a good year.
There is a view within the private equity world that I think after everything ground to a halt in 2023, I think the people expect 24 to be a little bit more back to business as usual. Lots of attractive companies to buy, good money to be made for great businesses that are resilient in the right sectors and subsectors. And we agree.
Trustee Souza.
Thank you, Chair Whitehead. Ian, thanks for being here. Vjoy, thanks for setting this up. We love the updates. Question, we haven't recommitted since 2014, correct?
That's right.
So that's almost 10 years.
Right.
Okay, so to your knowledge, what is the best private equity industries right now? I mean, showing the most growth, potentially.
Yeah, so a good question. So I can answer it more generally, and then I think, where we as a platform are allocating capital and where we're seeing opportunities. And I alluded to the latter during the presentation, but a point I'll make. So for Pantheon, we invest in three ways. So we make investments with underlying fund managers who are the best in breed, best in class. They're often sector specialists. They're highly operationally focused. So they're buying companies, making them better, repositioning them, ideally exiting at strong returns. We'll co-invest alongside those businesses. So we get underlying company exposure. And then we'll make secondary investments where we're buying midway through the life, more mature businesses. We have a thesis around secondaries at the moment that they're particularly compelling because there is still a need for liquidity in the market. That is generating both institutions like yourselves who are coming and saying, I need to sell some of my private equity holdings. and you're able to buy those positions at anywhere from a 10 to 25% type discount. Now, discounts on everything. It's all about the inherent value, but we think that's very, very compelling right now because there is a lot of need for liquidity in this market. And we're seeing different groups tap this market and this market grow and grow and grow. So we like that a lot for Pantheon. There are some benefits. There are many benefits for investors, and some would be directly applicable to your portfolio. But so I think that that's something to think about. More generally, and I touched on it a little bit in my prior response, but we really have a bias towards cycle-tested, resilient businesses in areas like tech and software in particular, business services, healthcare and healthcare services. So often quite asset-light businesses, full integration of technology. They're growing quickly, but they're not high growth. So they're very profitable and they're growing quickly. Ideally, they have strong margins. And those businesses, and what's so attractive about private equity ownership is the best sponsors have a reputation within their niche and within their subsector of being fantastic stewards of these businesses and helping, be it the original founders or the current owners, realize the next leg of growth and the next generation of growth. And so there is a narrative, I think, at the moment, because valuations have come down a little bit. If we do see a period that is a particularly strong US economy, there will be fantastic opportunities buying now for those businesses, which are always going to be valuable.
Thank you.
Okay, so in your opinion, why do you think companies, or why are they not selling?
Why are they not selling? Sorry.
Yes, why are companies holding out from selling?
Yeah. Really, this was, and it was more within 2023, but there was just a divergence in the valuation expectations of the companies relative to what buyers were willing to pay. And a lot of it came down to interest rates and the cost of the debt. Because if the debt is more expensive, to generate the same return, all things being equal, you have to pay a lower price for it. So it was really the interest rates and the cost of the debt, and it was the pace at which interest rates were moving, because that created the uncertainty, and the last thing people want is uncertainty. So I think really the markets, that is why companies weren't selling, because they weren't getting bids, and there was no bid in the market at the price that they were hoping to sell for.
And how long have you had our portfolio?
I've personally been involved with the portfolio since I moved to San Francisco in 2015. So
Okay, so what I'd like to know is, what has OHA given you, and what have you returned since? And then how does that equate to like a annual percentage of return? How does all that? I know you mentioned it there, but I just wanted to hear more clear.
So all of the commitments that you'd made to Pantheon had been made prior to the time that I took over the relationship. So you'd made commitments to those funds, but those funds often have a investment period of 4 to 5 years. So we were still making some investments, and that's where you see on slide 18, you can see all the investments that were made, or the amount of investments that were made post 2015. So it equates to approximately 17% of your portfolio. The investments were made since I took over the account. Now, the exits from the portfolio and the amount that we've returned over the last 8 years is a great question, which I don't have the answer to off the top of my head. In total, since inception, we have returned 57.2 million and there's a remaining 11.1 million in value. So that's in total since inception. I don't have the numbers since 2015. I wasn't, but I could get that for you.
Please.
Yeah.
I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, it would be when I inherited the portfolio, it was less mature and still in value creation phase. Now it's in harvesting or exit phase. So the majority of those distributions, that 57.2 would have come in the last 8 years, I think is reasonable to say, but I'll come back to you with the
Yes,
exact
okay.
number.
I
Yeah.
would like a nice accurate number.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Perfect.
No way. Okay. So, any other questions?
So,
Trustee Alapa.
oh, I'm going back to the vintage.
Yeah.
When we're looking at the returns, they look pretty low to me compared to in the beginning. And I know you just came on board. What again could you attribute that to?
So the returns of all
From
the investments.
2015.
Yeah, so those aren't the returns in that vintage chart. That's the percentage of your total investments in
Okay.
any given year. So
That's total, okay.
yeah, the returns by fund are on slide 16, and all of these investments were made prior to my coming on board, but the stronger returning funds were the investments that you made in 2010, 2012, 2014. And that was really a product of they invested after the global financial crisis. And so it was an attractive environment to generate attractive returns.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions? Okay, is that the end of this? Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for inviting
Yeah,
me here.
thank you so much.
We really value the partnership. So
Yes,
thank you for
God.
being fantastic clients over almost 2 decades. And look forward to coming back and talking about your portfolio next time. Okay.
Yeah, thank you,
all.
Ian.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bijoy. So members, we're going to move on to new business B. And this is the action item 2401. It's approval of the designation of Stacy as OHA authorized organizational representative for the Administration for Native Americans and a bunch of other stuff that. But I'll turn this over to our Pohana to present the action item or present the presenter of it. Thank you, Stacy.
Mahalo, Chair. I'm going to pass it over to Ramona Hink. Or Casey. Is it Casey?
Yeah, mahalo kapohana. Yeah, aloha my trustees. Okay, so the first of several actions coming your way this afternoon is the designation of Stacy, our new CEO, as our authorized organizational representative. This is a housekeeping move, trustees. It's very straightforward. OHA is a recipient of a grant from the ANA, and it's a grant that's meant to perpetuate Olelo Hawaii. And so, being that it's a federal grant, we have a new CEO, we need a board approved action to replace our prior authorized representatives. And CEO is the proper representative for in this case, and so we wanna bring this action to replace our old CEO with our new one, Stacy Ferrara. Any questions?
Okay, Chair Lindsay.
I cannot hear Chair, sorry.
I'd like to move that we approve the designation of Stacy Ferreira as the Office of Hawaiian Affairs Authorized Organizational Representative for the Administration for Native Americans American Rescue Plan Act, Emergency Native Language Funding Opportunity for Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders Grant Award, supporting OHA's Native Hawaiian language preservation and maintenance community-based research project.
So moved by trustee Lindsay, seconded by trustee Souza. Members, is there any discussion on the motion? Trustee Galatario.
Thank you. I'll be voting in support of the motion. Casey, this would be a good opportunity to bring status. What's the status of the grant? Is it an ongoing grant?
Sure.
Yeah, and very quickly, if you can.
Sure, trustee. So as a grantee, OHA then subgranted this this work to 3 organizations, but we are not a pass-through here. So we are a contributor to this grant. So the output of this grant is to deliver a report on Olelo perpetuation and normalization programs. And so the sub-grant is to 3 organizations: Papahana, Kualoa, Naleo Makamai, Ahapunano Leo, Noi I OHA, and Ke Kula o Pi'i Lani, Papiko Kaiao. And all of these are, four organizations. The 4th is Hui o Hano Hano, Pilina Haleo. And so the grants range from 70 to 80,000, 85,000 across the 4. And it's all for them to run programs or to help with gathering of data around the Olelo education, specifically delivered in a multi-generational format. And so we want all of this program info and data collection to occur amongst these program and grantees or sub-grantees. And then that then gets collected up to our teams, and we can help produce the report and write the report that then gets delivered. So the status, we track all 4 grantees via our grants monitoring process. All of them are on track. They're all compliant in terms of status. We are always monitoring and evaluating the status of compliance with our grantees, and everything's on track, trustee.
Is this a one-time or is it an ongoing?
One time. This is a one-time.
All right. Okay, mahalo. Thank you.
Chair Wahe, there's 0 testifiers on this item.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Oh, good. Any other questions? Okay, if there's no other comments or questions, can I get a roll call vote for the approval of this action item?
Trustee Ahuna is excused. Trustee Akaka. Sorry, Trustee Akaka, you are muted.
Aye.
Mahalo. Trustee Akina.
Aye.
Trustee Alapa. Trustee Galataria.
Aye.
Trustee Lindsay.
Aye.
Trustee Souza.
Aye.
Trustee Trask.
Aye.
Chair Wahe.
Yes.
8 yes votes.
The action item is approved. So we will move on to the next action item, RM 2402. Is there anyone signed up to testify?
Chair Wahe, no one has signed up to this.
Oh, hang on.
Yeah, one testify.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Aaron Salah. Dr. Salah.
Nolela kavilio ke aloha me o kopakahi. Aloha nui noi a kako, Chair Waihe'e, Vice Chair Alapa, trustees of the Office of the Resource Management Committee. Thank you for this opportunity to provide testimony this afternoon to this committee. My name is Aaron Salah, and it is my incredible honor to serve as Festival Director on behalf of the state of Hawaii as we prepare for Hawaii's hosting of the 13th Festival of Pacific Arts and Culture. In the room, I would also just acknowledge Dr. Makanani Salah, who is acting as Director of Operations for the festival. As we were provided the time and space in the trustees' December meeting to present on the festival, I will stand by that presentation here today. Additionally, however, in reflection of that $1.5 million ask of the Office of Hawaiian Affairs and per CEO Ferreira's ask of me, I have emailed CEO Ferreira with CC to Board Secretary Tokazu an itemized budget based on specific requests from trustees to better understand the proposed expenditure detail. My understanding is that was disseminated. Thank you. Please know again that this ask is meant to establish the Office of Hawaiian Affairs as a co-host along with the state of Hawaii, which has provided more than $10 million for this engagement, the largest convening of Indigenous Pacific Islanders in the world. Trustees, I think it important to note that this ask is not meant to be reflective of a community organization's request for support of a community event. The Festival of Pacific Arts and Culture, since its inception in 1972, has served as a platform for engagement at the highest levels of government within the Pacific region. It is meant to bring Pacific peoples of Pacific countries together to discuss the triumphs and trials of our peoples in the face of climate change, geopolitical dynamism, environmental sustainability issues, regenerative economic challenges, the list goes on. All of this is founded through this festival on the platform of Pacific cultural worldview, cultural knowledge, and cultural practice, all through points that continually and directly connect us to our ancestors. This 13th festival is the first time that Hawaii will host this engagement in its 52-year history. And as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, this will likely serve as the last time that Hawaii will be selected as host for at least 2 generations. We therefore make this ask working on behalf of the state of Hawaii, working in partnership with leadership at the highest levels of the United States of America. Indeed, my own personal goal, as I shared in the trustees' December meeting, and as I have corresponded on with CEO Ferreira since, begging your indulgence today, as I reiterated here, is to support the Office of Hawaiian Affairs in re-emphasizing its role as a representative and in reflection of a nation among nations. The festival should be leveraged by and for this office to meet eye to eye with such organizations as the National Indigenous Australians Agency of Australia, the Office of Samoan Affairs in American Samoa, the Council for Indigenous Peoples in Taiwan, the Ministry for Itāukei Affairs in Fiji, to name just a few. Indeed, one of our long-term goals for the large and robust cost of the hosting of this festival, as we prepare to host in the most Pacific, most Hawaiian way possible, is to assure that we have re-solidified our relationships with our Ohana Pakipika, that as Hawaiians and beneficiaries of this office, we rekindle our relationship with the people with whom we share this ocean, that as Pacific people, we remember our place as children of this vast ocean, living, struggling, thriving in this, our Sea of Islands. Thank you for this time. Aloha.
Thank you. Are there any
Mr. Chair.
other testimony?
Aaron, how
Yes.
long is this festival? From what date to what date?
Yep. Trustee, the official dates are 6 to 16 June of 2024. We have moved the official arrival ceremony to June 5th. So official dates, opening ceremonies on the evening of June 6th, with the arrival predating that by 1 day.
Thank you.
Trustee Trask.
Yes, trustees, I just wanted to let you know that when Aaron had first come before us a while back, I had asked him the question because I was concerned that there was not sufficient revenue to bring in Indigenous women, not only from Hawaii, but elsewhere. You know, since that time, I went ahead and checked it out. And I just wanted to let you know that I'm retracting the request I had for an additional $100,000. I called some Ni'i Haushel lay makers who I knew, and they said they were online. I checked with many people on my island and a few others that are not, but I was very surprised to learn that there really was an effort made for gender equity. When I looked first at the materials, it was about things like stone making, va'a carving. We know we don't have a lot of women there, but there are a lot of women that have been included, and I just wanted to say that I looked at it and thank you, Aaron, and your team for being gender inclusive. Thank you.
That's our kuleana.
Is there any other one signed up? You know what, we're going to ask Dr. Saya to stay during the actual business part of it. Okay. Yeah. So then let's move into that, and then we can ask him a lot of questions. So we're moving on to the action item 2402, and I'll turn it over to our Pohana Stacy for
Mahalo, Chair. I'm going to pass it on to Casey, COO.
Mahalo, Kapohana. Trustees, in this action item, I'm gonna share my screen so you can see where I'm looking at. Okay, so in this action item, I want to focus us on section 3E. Section 3E. Okay, so this is the heart of the request here. So you folks had the presentation from Aaron Salah, Festival Director, and we have some prior actions related to this that I want to provide you for context. So the Board of Trustees did already allocate and approve $500,000 for the FestPac funding. The funding was sort of split and allocated into 2 different fiscal years. So you'll see that the recommendation is going to recommend that all the money come up front, because the festival, I know, would want that and would request that. And so we have, but we have a request based on the presentation from director of the festival, and the request was for 1.5 million. So the 1.5 million here in section E breaks down as follows per Aaron's presentation. Yeah, 500,000 for Va'a Carvers, Heritage, Artistic, and other programming, 500,000 for the Pacific Traditional Leaders Forum, 150 for ecumenical service, 350,000 for the opening and closing ceremonies. So that was the budget breakdown for the 1.5 million asked. And in the action item right below is what opportunities OHA will receive with that level of funding. So the recommendation, trustees, is to fund 1.5 million for FestPac based on the requests from festival director and the team behind them. And the alternative recommendation is to approve a different funding amount of your folks choosing, and we will want you folks to deliberate. Aaron Salah is here. He has been promoted from testifier to participant, so ask any questions that you folks may have.
Sorry, Trustee Akina.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Casey, is the proposal before us today for 1.5 million additional to what we have already committed, or it brings it up to 1.5 million?
Brings it up to 1.5.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Trustee Trask.
I just want to speak very strongly in favor of this. There's a belief and an attitude among some that the South Pacific Festival is really just something to drive tourism, but it is not that. It's an opportunity for us as an office, Native people, to bring other Indigenous peoples of the Pacific in for all kinds of exchanges. And I think I had told the trustees earlier that I'm working separately with other Indigenous women who will come to look at things that are not on the agenda, but very important things, domestic violence and other things. I wanted you to know that a great deal of this work is going on. So when you look at the activities that Aaron Ma have put together for us, it's not limited to that. But for those of us who are here, it is a great opportunity to include other things that may not be included on the agenda. And I'm just very in support of giving them the money they need. I know that at one time trustees were looking at 0.5 million years ago. We should look at the cost of living that has also increased, but I just wanted to speak that I'm very much in favor of this thing. And I think we need it, and it'll be a shot in the arm for our people and give everybody a chance to strengthen our Ohana bonds in the Pacific. Thank you.
Trustee Souza.
Hello, Madam Vice Chair. Aaron, thank you for being here. Makanani, good to see you. I think I mentioned the first time, I want to be everywhere. I want our OHA logo everywhere. I want us trustees and admin staff to be everywhere. But I'm glad Trustee Trask also mentioned that we can add certain things of value to this week-long or 10-day-long event. And I'm looking forward to that as well. And only we can control that as well. So just a reminder. Thank you.
Trustee Aquino, followed by Trustee Galatario.
Thank you. And thank you so much, Aaron. We've had many forums come to Hawaii, including Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation, APEC, and so forth. And one of the things we've seen in other kinds of convenings is a coming and going with no long-term plan for the execution of ideas, further cooperation, and so forth. One of the things that is very important about the festival is that it will promote political leadership and regionalism. What do you have in place for the continuity and development of ideas along these lines after the festival?
No.
And that would particularly be able to involve OHA.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. It is one of the questions we are being challenged with by state legislators as well. What is the long-term impact? What is the long-term return on investment? And so let me just rewind just a little bit, trustees, and note that the departure in this engagement between APEC and IUCN is that in APEC and IUCN, ultimately attendees are paying a registration fee. The Festival of Pacific Arts and Cultures is much more expensive for us because we are hosting in a Pacific way. Ultimately, the responsibility of delegates and countries is to get themselves to our house. Once they're here, we host them, we feed them, we provide housing, we provide transportation, we provide programming. And so therein lies the vast majority of the cost of this festival. It's an important piece of reminding us our responsibility as Pacific hosts. Thank you. And so in response to the kinds of challenges we've been asked to provide in terms of the long-term investment, lie in economic growth, creating a thriving hub for ongoing revenue and engagement with the Pacific, stimulating local and international economic activities, and fostering sustainable development. And so I'll just put a note here that one of the engagements we're really hoping that OHA is especially, to Trustee Souza's point, especially involved in, is an engagement with traditional leaders. And so to that end, we are planning to host an engagement at Iolani Palace that is inclusive of the royal family of Tonga, the Great Council of Chiefs from Fiji, Vunivalu, representation of the Paramount Chiefs of Samoa, Pa'ariki, the Queen of the Cook Islands. And this is an anomaly. It is a unique activity for the festival. This has not happened in the festival's history, but it is also Kalakau's dream. Our hope is that the Office of Hawaiian Affairs will be the convening host for that engagement at Iolani Palace. That is part of this ask. The goal therein is to look at the role of traditional leadership in the face of climate change, in the face of contemporary living, in the face of geopolitical situations in the Pacific, and in the face of looking at this economic development and the role of traditional leadership in economic development. So ultimately, the foundation is set with cultural worldview, Pacific and Hawaiian worldview, but really the goal is to stand firmly upon that foundation and look really robustly at the future. We're also considering programming and sustainability in the long term, addressing climate change and sea level rise in the Pacific, implementing eco-friendly practices and minimizing environmental impact. And so this goes back to the notion of Tuvalu and their desire to redesign themselves into the metaverse as a response to ocean level rise. And so partnering with Tuvalu in the long term and really looking at what that means, how Hawaii can support and learn from Tuvalu, engagement with innovative technologies, using cutting edge technologies to modernize cultural practice, showcasing the rich cultural heritage of the Pacific through virtual experience, socio-cultural well-being, recentering culture and environment and public policy, like we're trying to do with the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, that I think that is in line with the policy and the strategy of the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, preserving and celebrating diverse Pacific cultures and contributing to socio-cultural well-being, And then, of course, geopolitical engagement, which I personally feel, as I've shared with CEO Ferreira, is the heart of OHA's engagement in this convening, establishing Hawaii as a venue for high-level convenings. Again, in using the Traditional Leaders Forum as one example of that, enhancing diplomatic and geopolitical engagement, strengthening relations across the Pacific. So if I can be so bold as to sort of insert my ego here, I just come from the perspective that Hawaii, as a result of the kind of diversity that finds itself living here in peace, navigating and negotiating our peace on a daily basis, I just come from the perspective that Hawaii is the key to world peace. The peace between Israel and Hamas, we find that here. And it's a special kind of engagement that Hawaii has that is unique in the world. And so from my perspective, in engagement again with CEO Ferreira and really helping to set up as much as we can success for the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, again, leveraging the power of this festival, is really to establish the Office of Hawaiian Affairs as that convening venue, that the Office of Hawaiian Affairs should be the convening venue on behalf of the nation of Hawaii. And so I hope that answers your question. I realize that's a little bit more long-winded than you may have anticipated, Trustee. Thank you.
Trustee Galutario.
Thank you very much, Chair. Obviously, well, for myself, I'll be voting in support.
Thank you.
My question is more along the lines of, protocol, culture, and protocol must permeate every aspect of this Pacific Fest, right? Because it'll take us back to where we began. As you mentioned, geopolitically, it'll put OHA in the right space to move forward on our VA. So my question has to do with VA, so I'll bring it down right down to ground level or ocean level, if you will. But you mentioned VA, so I'm very interested in who's coming with their VA, because we have VA from all of our islands. But what about the other island? What about the island nations? Who's coming?
So Fiji is sailing Utunialo from Fiji. Cook Islands are sailing. French Polynesia is sailing Fafete. New Zealand is shipping their canoe to Hawaii to participate in the VA arrival. We have, I think, 4 canoes coming from Micronesia, all being shipped over. The plan right now is that PVS will sail Hokulea down to Raiatea in March and come back up with the canoes that are sailing up. And obviously, well, I should say, of course, we have Ohana Va'a as the, with Kanehuna Moku as lead, Bani Kahapea, a woman, Trustee Trask, leading the charge on the Va'a programming. Ohana Va'a will serve as the host for that engagement. And so again, to Trustee Souza's point, obviously we would want OHA's robust engagement and representation in the Va'a arrival ceremony on the 5th.
Is Trustee Trask's island coming? They're bringing their Va'a?
Yes, as is Maui.
As is Maui. Now, Maui's Va'a.
Yeah.
Mo'ikia?
Mo'ikia, yeah.
Okay. From what I understand, Lahaina took it. It's still there?
Yeah. Well,
is this Tim Gilliam's one? Okay.
Yeah. And if I can just assert, what we're trying to do is keep the VA'a people here as long as we can. They're already, in our conversations with the VA'a people, they're already getting sort of antsy to leave Oahu as quickly as possible so that they can circuit the islands over the course of the festival. So we want to make sure that we've done the VA'a programming that we have scheduled for Oahu before we send them out. Everyone wants to go to Maui. Everyone has asserted, every single delegation has asserted that they want to pay tribute to Maui. And we're trying to facilitate that with the governor's office. Trustee, I may reach out to you to help us facilitate what that looks like. Yeah, so the VA'a programming and the carving programming especially are quite large, quite robust programs in the festival.
Terrific. Okay, I appreciate that. Mahalo.
Thank you, Trustee.
Trustee Alapa.
Hello, Aaron. I would like to know what is the breakdown of the ecumenical service that you have here for OHA to conduct? The 150,000?
Yeah, so we have 90,000 for personnel. That is inclusive. Personnel, the way that we've defined personnel here, and I should note to trustees that personnel here is described as cultural practitioners and artist fees, the administrative program staff, government liaison, and event production support personnel, that money is here, it stays here. That money comes to us and it stays here in Hawaii. So for the ecumenical service, it's 90,000 for the personnel. That is inclusive of our engagement. Ultimately, that June 9th is Ali'i Sunday. It's Kamehameha Sunday. So we are in discussion with Ahahipu'u and Koeha'o Church to see if they might be willing. I might reach out to you for some assistance on this. They might be willing to move their service up so that we can bring that same personnel over to Stan Sheriff. We had, just as a quick aside, we had originally planned that we would do the ecumenical service at Koeha'o. We far exceed personnel capacity. In addition to that, Trustee Alapa, translation and interpretation, which will run the gamut throughout our programming, both from English main scripts to Olelo Hawaii, and also to French for French Polynesia, and then media and broadcast. And so the goal here in media and broadcast, again, I insert myself here, is to assure that all media and broadcast is brought to you by the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. And so, and so media and broadcast over the course of this ask comes up to a total, I think, of somewhere around $250,000. But yeah.
Trustee Aquino.
Thank you very much. Aaron, just to follow up on your last visit to us,
Yes.
at that time, you had a certain budget figure in mind, and you had to raise a certain amount in order to be viable. Can you give us an update on that? Have you achieved your goal?
Yes and no. Thank you for the question. The commission has approved a budget of $20.39 million. The total state give is $12.5 million. So we are getting $5 million from the legislative appropriation in 2023 and $5 million from the governor's discretionary fund. We are raising, just as a way of coming to the table, our goal is to raise an additional $5 million, inclusive of this $1.5 million. All taken, then we have raised, I think it is $2.5 million if we're successful with this $1.5 million ask, and then we'll have to raise another 2.5. And so that's where we stand.
So you could leave this room today just 2.5 million away from being viable.
Yes.
And then the programming, as far as you're concerned, is going to go forward successfully.
Absolutely.
Well, I congratulate you.
Thank you.
On that. And let me just follow up with my other question I had after your first visit, and I'll amplify it a little bit. You're creating an organization now with new personnel, contractors, grantees, and so forth. A lot of moving parts very quickly that will come together and then disperse. We've seen organizations like this respond to the recent pandemic. We've seen it in crisis situations such as on the island of Maui with the wildfires. And many of them have had challenges with their financial integrity.
Sure.
As we partner with you, we are partners. We're concerned, our kuleana is definitely for the trust funds that we will impart to you. But our kuleana is beyond that. We care about the integrity of all our peoples together. What financial measures do you have in place to ensure financial integrity of the entire process?
Thank you. So as you can imagine, we are under audit at all times. The goal with DBED that we're working with DBED now to do is to bring the auditor on immediately, so that as we spend down these funds, that we work with the auditor throughout the process rather than waiting to the end. And so that's part of it. We are working obviously with a CPA firm, a rather reputable CPA firm, and reputable Native Hawaiian bookkeeper. And so at the very lowest level in our day-to-day operations, everything goes into accounting mode, and then working with DBED. And let me also note, Trustee, that our responsibility to the Commission on FESPAC is that we report all funding, not just on state funding. So our responsibility then to the Commission, again, the Office of Hawaiian Affairs has a seat on this commission. Our responsibility is to report all funding. That will include the Office of Hawaiian Affairs funding. It includes all philanthropic donations. It includes, every penny that comes to us in support of this festival. And so you would have access to understanding the spend down of funds at any time you wish to know what that is. And we will coordinate that with CEO Ferrara.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you.
I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Chair Wahehe,
Trustee Akaka.
mahalo. Mahalo for joining us today. I do have a number of questions and concerns as well that I wanted to discuss with the board. And one of the questions is regarding the breakdowns and the requests and the entities that you're using and contractors. Were there RFPs put in where you got the highest and best use or economical options?
Sure. So in the way that the state did the RFP was for a festival provider. And so we were awarded the contract of festival provider. So beyond us, that is subcontractors are not subject to procurement that is by state procurement policy. However, DBED has reserved the right to approve or disapprove any submitted subcontractor. That is to say that DBED must approve all subcontractors before said subcontractors can be contracted.
So for instance, when the ask includes regarding media, broadcast, hospitality, supplies, equipment, security, and all of this is properly vetted and there's prudence in terms of what the decisions are and how you came to decide on who your vendors will be? Because this is a process that we have to go through with every single project we have going on.
No, absolutely. So media and broadcast, again, all subcontractors are vetted through the Department of Business, Economic Development and Tourism per our contract.
Okay. And was DBED the one to make the final decision on in terms of everything on there from media to security and so forth?
In terms of these particular line items, you mean?
Like, do you folks have decided who your contractors or entities will be that will be
yes,
paid for these services?
Yes. Yes.
And what is the basis on the amount that they're charging? Is this
So on one hand, we've done our own version of procurement in terms of pulling bids. On the other, however, given the pardon me, but the lack of time for us to get the festival implemented and executed, the goal was really to find organizations that were experienced in the doing of this kind of work at this level. That is working in and with Pacific peoples, that is working in and with production at the highest level, that is representative of the state of Hawaii, as we would like representative and reflected in this festival.
okay? And the structures that you folks are building, are these going to be used for the future? Say going to a museum or some entity?
Right. So for the festival village, the strategy is twofold. On one hand, we are partnering with the Department of Education to assure that any school in the department, or charter schools, private schools, etc., who wish to adopt, as it were, a hale post-festival are welcome to do so. That part of the narrative and the strategy of the hale, of the festival village itself, ultimately looks at the removing of invasive species, building them into a usable structure, and then creating, curriculum potentials post-festival. This is to Trustee Akina's point as well, in terms of the long-term impact. On the other side of it, again, in terms of long-term impact, our goal is to look at the viability of engaging a Pacific marketplace on a biannual basis that necessarily brings back artisans and cultural practitioners from the Pacific to engage in economic and professional development on the biannual.
Okay, so what I want to say as well is I want to say this respectfully to FESPAC and to our board and administration that there is some sticker shock when we received that request of 1.5, because when I think about short-term and long-term impact, I also think about what this would mean for our beneficiaries, the positive impacts of this festival, but also the positive impacts if we were to take this, what would be a precedent amount of funding that we would provide towards something else, say for instance, our other pillars from health to education, economic stability and so forth. So that is a strong concern for me, because it would be very challenging to have our beneficiaries and constituents contact us short and long term saying, wow, $1.5 million. We have such great concerns in Lahaina. We have such great need within our communities, and this is but a 2-week event. How do you explain that with confidence? So yeah, and even just with looking at what the sponsorships that we have currently in this agenda, and with, if you look at the cumulation of the next 2 years, the last 2 years, and how much we have spent and allocated, this is a great jump from what we have been contributing. And boy, you know, I look at prudence, and to me, this is I do have some concerns in terms of such a high figure such as 1.5, and I was concerned how FestPac as an entity even came to those figures initially, because when we were presented, I think it was on December 7th, the details that were provided really didn't provide much insight into towards what was asked, given the amount of funding that was requested. But if you could give some peace of mind so that one or more could feel comfortable in going forward with an amount from the voted on 100,000 to 500,000, or if it would be more than that, if there could be more information or peace of mind provided in going forward. Administration perhaps, or the FestPac team.
I'm sorry, trustee, I may be misunderstanding your question. You're asking for me to provide you peace of mind based on the jump from 500,000 to 1.5 million? So yeah, let me just note that I was unaware of a 500,000 give agreed upon rate funding level. And so, you know, the December 7th presentation of FestPac to the Office of Hawaiian Affairs represented my first presentation as festival director to the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. And so, I was actually unaware of the $500,000 agreed upon rate. I think it may predate me. I think it also predates CEO Ferreira. So I apologize that I was unaware of that. The $1.5 million ask, if I'm, again, forgive me for being so bold. I was asked to make a $3 million ask of the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. And in consultation with our team and consultation with the commission, we decided that because the Office of Hawaiian Affairs was necessarily engaged, and rightfully so, on Maui, that a $3 million ask would be too forward of us in an engagement such as this. The $1.5 million ask is really reflective of our desire, again, to establish the Office of Hawaiian Affairs as a representative of a nation among nations, as a co-host for this engagement of 3,000 delegates coming from 28 countries across the Pacific. I well note, very, very well note, Trustee Akaka, your concern as to how this might be better served elsewhere for beneficiaries. I come from the perspective, and as a Native Hawaiian myself, who grew up in the Pacific region, bobbing up and down on these islands, I know the power of this festival, and that the goal of this festival ultimately is to rekindle our relationships as Hawaiians in the Pacific. We don't do this well. Native Hawaiians don't do Pacific Islanders well at all. We don't even see them walking down the street. And we have the largest diasporic population of Pacific Islanders living right here up the road from this building. And so the goal, therefore, is, from my perspective, again, I apologize, I ask your indulgence as I speak rather forwardly. The goal here is to understand the role that our beneficiaries play, that your beneficiaries play, a beneficiary I am myself, as hosts in an engagement such as this. We will not get this this opportunity again. It offers us likewise an opportunity to show our diasporic Pacific Islanders living in Hawaii that we see them, and that seeing is critical to our success as Pacific Islanders. I cannot, maybe I should just stop there and again beg your indulgence. Thank you.
Yes, and just as a reference for you folks, even $500,000 is a lot for us at the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. 1.5 would be a big chunk of what we receive annually from the legislature. Before, we would only get about 15.1. We worked it up to 25.1. And with the many needs that we're working to meet, this is a strong concern of mine.
Trustee Souza.
Mahalo, Chair. I wish I was a part of the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, because I'll figure out how to get you your other $2.5 million, Aaron. There's no better person to take on this role as a cultural practitioner, as a person who's been embedded into from being for Kamehameha, understanding the culture. I think we're going to do it right. So the question should be, at the end of the day, what is it going to take to do it right? And so that's my concern. I think $1.5 million is not too much to ask. And like Trustee Galataria said earlier, I'll be supporting it. Honestly, like I said, if there's more that we can do as Office of Hawaiian Affairs, because honestly, 1.5 is not a lot. And we're fortunate to be in a position where we can spread out the funds. We can support Maui. We can support Kulakaiapuni. We can support, down payment assistance, which we're working on. That kind of stuff. We have a lot to work with, and the point is, we want to get the monies out. This is going to support our cultural practitioners, right? Our language people, our entertainers, or whatever it may be. Because we're doing it right, these guys are going to be at the table. So we're indirectly almost supporting these guys without giving them the money, right? We're giving it to you. You're keeping it here, keeping it home. We can ask for more. So thank you.
Trustee Lindsay. Trustee Trask.
Thank you. Colleagues, I wanted to respond to some of the previous concerns stated, and thank you, Calais, for being very clear with your concerns. The first thing is, I was kind of concerned myself, because what kind of a precedent are we setting? So I went to look, and this is what I found out. The South Pacific Festival is for us in the Pacific. It includes Polynesia, Micronesia, and Melanesia. Hosts are chosen based on a rotation. So this year, it will be from Polynesia, it will be from Hawaii. 4 years from now, it will go to Micronesia, and it will be someone else. And 4 years after that, to Melanesia. When it returns to Polynesia, it will not be Hawaiian, because we have already hosted. It will not be Aotearoa. We have already hosted. Perhaps it will be Samoa. But when I looked at that, I realized that we're really not setting a precedent. We host this. They will not be back for at least, I think over 20 years. It'll take them 8 years to go through Micronesia and Melanesia. Then when they come back to Hawaii, we're the last in line. So they have to go to Samoa 4 years later. We will have to wait for 8 years for them to return. So I think if you look at it that way, you can see that it's really not a bad precedent, and it's really a great opportunity that may not return for 20 or 24 years to our region. I wanted to look at that. And the other thing I had wanted to point out is that when we look at our role, you know, we're always treated like the adopted and Hanai child in this state. But when our Pacific brothers and sisters come, and with Aaron, we are elevated to the pole as the Native Pacific Islanders who host. And I'm so proud of it. There are things that we have in common with Micronesia and Melanesia. It's not tourism. It's more drug addiction, domestic violence on the rise. But when we bring all of our peoples together, many things are going to be discussed. Much sharing will go ahead. And that's why I really want to give these folks the money. And I really want to put this last thing on the table, trustees. They're elevating us to the ali'i of this island chain. We don't have our protocols together yet. We need our kihei. We have our protocol officer with Keone. Let's take a look at it, gang. I want to go out there looking like a team. Where's our kihei? I talked with the chair. She reminded me the kalo is our sign. What a great sign. Let's start getting this ready, yup. And I also am thankful that we have the backup plan. Thank you, Kalei, for bringing it out, because there are going to be some structures built, but already they're looking at recycling it so we can use it for onshore venues for continuing Hawaiian education. You know, I was concerned about that, but we're not tearing things down and wasting it. So I just wanted to point that out and say, come on, gang. These folks are lifting us up. They're our Pacific Native family. Let's show them what it means to host with aloha, and let's try to be, you know what I'm saying? Let's try to be more of a team and appear that way. Let's get our kiheis and all that ready. I don't know, you know me, I'm not hula dancer. I am not chanter. But when Aaron came, he brought one of our ex-employees with him. I think his name was Keola. He had the chats down, so it won't be me doing it, but I'll work kihei behind you guys. Unless you want to do it, Keone, you can do all the chats. Anyway, that's my manao.
Thank you. Okay, I'll wait, Trustee Galatario.
Yeah, very briefly. I can appreciate Trustee Akaka's concerns. I look at things through a political lens. That's where I live. And this is, compared to the investment that we're being asked to provide, it's a political masterstroke, the way I look at it. And if OHA can emerge as the preeminent representative of the Lahui with the rest of the Pacific, well, this, I think we're getting at a bargain basement price, frankly, because it takes a lot to put that idea out. So again, I'll vote in favor, but thank you for the opportunity to say that.
Question, that's right.
Okay, I'll go last.
Aaron, you know, honestly, I don't have any questions. I have confidence in the FEST organization. My question is mostly procedural, maybe to Stacy, and just to, if nothing else, to get this on the public record. This proposal has been reviewed by admin, and you guys are recommending it based on the review that you had of this proposal, correct? And Stacy, my question is, when in our last audit, they criticized us in funding different conferences, And if you notice, they didn't even criticize us based on the merits of the conference itself. They criticized us on the fact that they called it a non-competitive grant, and it was us a discretionary spending practice that they highly criticized us for. What's different about this that would mitigate that kind of criticism from the state auditors?
So first I want to go back to our due diligence on the fiscal ask. So we did go back to ensure that we could fully fund this without sacrificing any other financial commitments that the organization currently has. And I'm going to ask for COO and CFO to also join in because these audits were done prior to me coming. But my understanding is as long as no single trustee is making the discretionary ask, but if it's coming to the board and the board is having discussion and a vote, that it should be permissible. Casey, do you want to add anything?
Yeah. Mahalo KP and Chair Wahe'e. The two things I would add is, I would echo what Stacy just said, that one of the underlying points and criticisms of the past was that whenever a decision about deploying money, dispersing funds rests with one individual, we got a problem. So it has to go to a body, and that eliminates a lot of problems that could occur. So that's one. Two, I'm trying to work with the Festival of the Pacific, and I know they're on their game here, but this won't necessarily be a grant. This will be treated as a government to government transfer, because OHA has its own mandates on how it can disperse funds, and in this case, the recommendation would be to make it a government to government transfer. So that's not a grant.
And the transfer would be DBED.
Thank you.
Correct.
That's all okay, that's good. Trustee Lindsay.
Hearing all of my colleagues' comments, I'd like to make the motion.
Let's make the motion. We can still have discussion.
Yeah.
On the motion. I didn't realize we hadn't. Sorry. Can I get a motion to approve and authorize the disbursement of $1.5 million to fund the 13th Festival of Pacific Arts and Culture Hawaii 2024 Ho'olulahui Regenerating Oceana?
So moved.
It's been moved by trustee and it's been moved by trustee Lindsay, seconded by trustee Souza. Any discussion, trustee? Any discussion, trustee Aquino?
Thank you. I want to say that I appreciate the questions that Trustee Akaka raised, because she raised several questions I was going to raise, but I thought I would be just a little more polite. We have a responsibility to the Native Hawaiian people for the use of our funds. And I think that we have to ensure that we get the value from participating with FESPAC that we are setting our sights upon. It cannot be a flash in the pan for us. I'm pretty convinced that we're on shaky ground with the state auditor if it is the case that this event doesn't contribute to our ultimate mission and fulfillment of our long-term plan. In the past, I think it was 2012 or thereafter shortly, the auditor, I believe, was critical of quote unquote cultural activities throughout the Pacific that did not directly result in the advancement of the Native Hawaiian people. And so I think we just have to make it work. We have to have that commitment. It's a very short period of time. I'm a little nervous about that. We've just got a couple of months to put everything into place. And if we're going to get the value that Trustee Souza speaks of in terms of the branding of OHA, we've got a lot of work to do. I agree with trustee Galataria that this could be a great political and branding opportunity. But if we don't get our plan into place, it will just come and go, and it will be a waste of the funds for that purpose. And so we owe it to the success of our peoples all throughout the Pacific to ensure that this is going to work. And we look to our CEO with great trust. The other side of it is if we are going to put such a significant amount of our funding into it, we have to make sure that the use of that money is held to the highest standard of accountability. So again, we look to our CEO who sits on the commission with that intention to make it work and to hold it accountable. I will wholeheartedly support when we vote.
Trustee Trask.
And I just wanted to make a comment. The conversation we have now, is it appropriate for use of state trust funds, et cetera? You know, when this came up quite a while back, those were the very questions that were asked at the state legislature. And the answer was, at the end, the state is supporting to the tune of 12.5 million. So I just wanted to say, I don't really see that there's a question of how the state is gonna approve or disapprove. They already are showing us where to go, and I'm glad they put up the 12.5 because it does focus on a benefit for Pacific Native people. And this time around, they put the 12.5, we put the 1.5.
Trustee Alapa.
You have my 1000% support. But I want to ask you this question. I'd like to know your vision for the opening and closing ceremonies.
What is so important to me as a child who grew up in American Samoa before coming to Kamehameha is that what has informed the way that I look at myself as a Native Hawaiian was nurtured by my upbringing in Samoa, where it didn't really matter if you knew how to uehe or you knew how to sing. God said you have to sing, so you sing. And God said you have to move, so you move. And in preparation for cultural practice, there was no sort of sense of what is the performativity of it. It is a matter of identity as a Pacific Islander, as a Samoan in that case. The opening and closing ceremonies, the most important part of the opening and closing ceremonies is a parade of nations. That parade of nations establishes who gets to stand in the front, shake the governor's hand, shake the chair's hand, and present gifts and receive gifts and all of those kinds of things. It really is this moment where we stand again, eye to eye, face to face, and acknowledge each other for existing in this world. If for nothing more, the opening ceremonies for me are this opportunity for us to say, I see you. And that is the core definition of aloha. That is the power that Hawaii has in the world, that no one else has. Yep. And so there is a pomp and ceremony, pomp and circumstance bit of the opening ceremony. It's meant to be a celebratory endeavor of the engaging of 28 countries in the personas of 2,500 people, plus entourage, plus our own public, plus our Native Hawaiian community, plus our Pacific Islanders in diaspora, plus politicians and trustees, et cetera. That in and itself is going to impact the way that we understand ourselves in this world for the rest of our lives. It is so important to know. I mean, what the challenge that I have is that it's difficult to to articulate the impact that this festival will have until we're in it. And then you will realize how much our lives have individually and collectively changed as a result of this experience. So many of my own colleagues, you know, Mahina Poipoi, Paishan is one of them. She was planning to be a litigation lawyer, and then she went to the Cook Islands in 1992, and it changed her life. The rest of her life was defined by that one moment in 1992. And she's become a leader in the community, a leader in the Native Hawaiian community, Olelo Hawaii speaker, as a result of her experience in the Cook Islands. And so to Trustee Akina's point, to Trustee Akaka's point, I absolutely understand the challenge that we all have. When OHA noted that OHA was going to give $6 million to Maui, immediately I thought, how do we come to OHA with an ask like $3 million on behalf of the Festival of Pacific Arts? To Trustee Lindsay's point, to Trustee Akina's point, this notion that this impact is literally only 10 days long. And we have this responsibility to build intensity into these 10 days, because these 10 days will change the lives of Native Hawaiians for generations to come, as they have done for Hawaiians who have been a part of this festival since 1976. And so the closing ceremonies are exactly that, a parade of nations and the passing of the mantle, again, in a way to say, I see you, we wish you the very best. We don't want this festival back for a really long time. Kalamai. Thank you very much.
Mahalo, Aaron.
If there's no other questions, can I get the roll call vote?
No further testifiers on this, just Chair Wahe.
Trustee Ahuna is excused. Trustee Akaka,
Aye.
Trustee Akina,
Aye.
Trustee Alapa,
Aye.
Trustee Galataria, Trustee Lindsay, Trustee Souza, sorry,
Aye.
Trustee Trask,
Aye.
Chair Wahe,
Yes.
8 yes votes.
Key members, the action item passes out of the committee, and we'll move on to our sponsorships.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, has anybody signed up to testify? We don't have any testifiers on the grants. You know, and this is the time where I take them. So, okay, so with that, I would like to turn over the sponsorships action item over to our Pohana Stacy.
Mahalo, Chair. I'm going to now pass it over to Casey Brown, COO.
Hello, my trustees. Okay, the third action item is to approve 2 sponsorships. As a board here, they're very straightforward. If you look at your action item, you can get the overview in Roman numeral number 1. So the first is $10,000 to Lele Aloha. Lele Aloha is the nonprofit that facilitated the Unity Gathering, the Maui Walk that occurred a couple of weeks ago. And so this 10,000 goes to support this organization, and also even as a post event, it's supporting that event as well, the walk as well. Okay, the second is a sponsorship to Halekipa, $15,000 for it's their annual fundraising dinner. And 15, there's different levels. You can hopefully get a chance to review the flyers. And so the $15,000 sponsorship is what's being recommended. And here, when we move to Roman numeral B, you can see what comes with the different levels of sponsorships here.
Okay, thank you, Casey. Before we delve into the discussion, can I get a motion, Trustee Lindsay?
Yes, I'd like to move that we approve OHA funding of fiscal year 2024 third quarter sponsorships totaling $25,000.
It's been moved by Trustee Lindsay, it's seconded by Trustee Alapa. Are there any discussions on this motion or on the sponsorships?
Yes, I just wanted to share that Halekipa is one of the places that we visited during our Oahu Island community meetings on the Kapolei side. And
Right.
It was Venus that you had met, and she had also presented at our meeting in Kapolei as well.
Mahalo, Trustee Akaka.
Okay, if there's no further questions or comments, can I get a roll call vote?
Trustee Ahuna is excused. Trustee Akaka.
Aye.
Trustee Akina.
Aye.
Trustee Alapa. Trustee Galataria.
Aye.
Trustee Lindsay.
Yes.
Trustee Souza.
Aye.
Trustee Trask.
Aye.
Chair Wahehe.
Yes.
8 yes votes.
Okay, the sponsorships are going to move out of committee. Our next item is biennium budget, I think realignment 1. Has anybody signed up to testify?
No one has signed up to testify.
Okay,
Make the motion.
so with that, I'll turn it over to, you know what? I'll turn it over to Stacy. We'll put it on the screen.
Mahalo, Chair. I'm going to pass it over to CFO Ramona Hing.
Good afternoon, Chair Waheed, Vice Chair Lapa, trustees and esteemed colleagues. On the docket is OHA biennial budget for the fiscal biennial periods fiscal year 24 and fiscal year 25. Realignment number 1, core and non-core realignments. Also attending this meeting is Grace Chen. She's a financial and reporting analyst and co-prepared this action item with me. So the fiscal biennial budget for fiscal year 24 and 25 was approved on June 29th, 2023. The major budget realignments for core and non-core are to budget for the $1,023,000 governance loan budgeted in 23 and paid off in 24. So we have to include the $1,023,000 into our budget for fiscal year 24. 1.3 increased request to increase the Haku'oni budget for Lot L repairs and to true up 6 months of actual to budget. So if you have any questions regarding this realignment, Grace and I are here to answer them. Mahalo.
Thank you, Ramona. Can I get a motion before we get into discussion to approve the fiscal biennium budget realignment number 1, core and non-core for fiscal biennium periods 2023 to 2024 and 2024 to 2025 as summarized at attachment A. It's been moved by Trustee Lindsay, seconded by
Second.
Is there any discussion on the motion or on any of the items? Okay, hearing none, can I get a roll call vote for its approval?
Trustee Ahuna is excused. Trustee Akaka.
Aye.
Trustee Akina.
Aye.
Trustee Alapa.
Aye.
Trustee Galataria. Trustee Lindsay.
Aye.
Trustee Souza.
Aye.
Trustee Trask.
Aye.
Chair Wahehe.
Yes.
8 yes votes.
The motion is approved and the realignment action item moves out of the committee. If there are no announcements, then can I get a motion to adjourn? It's been moved by Trustee Souza, seconded by Trustee Hulu Lindsay. Any discussion, members? Hearing none, can I get a roll call vote? to adjourn?
Trustee Ahuna is excused. Trustee Akaka.
Aye.
Trustee Akina.
Aye.
Trustee Alapa. Trustee Galataria.
Aye.
Trustee Lindsay.
Aye.
Trustee Souza.
Aye.
Trustee Trask.
Aye.
Chair Wahe,
Yes,
8 yes votes, meetings adjourned.
we are adjourned.